The Cleveland Cavaliers knew they were trading for an NBA superstar when they acquired Donovan Mitchell. Of course, the asking price was pretty hefty and has left the team with some very noticeable holes that still need filled, but it's also shed some light on just how important some of these guys are to the overall success of the team at the moment. With the need for perimeter shooting and bench firepower, Cleveland has had to lean on a few players on the roster more than others to help offset those issues. And with that in mind, here are the 5 players I believe are most important to the overall success of the team right now in order. Number 5, Darius Garland. Look, I can hear the groans of displeasure with this one, and I get it. Isaac Okoro, a player consistently referred to as the Cavs' 5th starter and often a forgotten man on offense most nights, is pretty important to the team's success in his own right. As the 5th option most of the time, he rarely sees a high amount of shot attempts, averaging just 4.7 field goal attempts per game. That's almost 2 fewer than last year. So with that being the case, he must capitalize on the limited touches he does get, and to that point, he is as of late. Since the start of the 2023 calendar year, Okoro is averaging 8.2 points while more importantly knocking down over 42.9% of his threes. Combine that with his usual brand of tough-nosed defense and you get the makings of a pretty important role player, just not among the team's most important players. So back to LeVert. Here's the thing. Darius Garland has had a brutal season from an efficiency standpoint. In the first 12 games of the season, he put up averages of 13.8 points, 4.8 rebounds, and 5.3 assists, which sounds good on the surface, but when you factor in his 38.2% field goal percentage, it loses some of its luster. The crazy part is his 3-point efficiency. Something he's never really been known for helped prevent that terrible overall field goal percentage from being even worse. During that same 12-game stretch, he completed a harrowing 35.6% of his 2-point field goals. That has been the story this season so far for the Michigan State product. And perhaps even more telling are his stat lines when operating as a starter versus coming off the bench. He has started 27 games for Cleveland this season, and in those 27 games, he's looked pretty decent, putting up 15, 5, and 4 while completing 40.4% of his field goals, including 40.4% of his triples. Now, when it comes to him coming off the bench, he is averaging 9 points, 3.4 rebounds, and 3.2 assists, along with a 42.4% field goal percentage and 31.4% 3-point percentage. And while some of that decline can be attributed to the loss of damn near 8 minutes per game, you can't blame it all solely on the fact that he didn't start, because he's still spending a ton of minutes with the starters and getting a ton of open looks that he just isn't knocking down. For instance, since returning from his most recent missed game, February 6th, for those of you who can't remember, he's completing 33.3% of his catch and shoot threes. Even his typically reliable mid-range jumper has largely failed him this season. He's completed just 22.6% of his mid-range attempts this year compared to 40.2% last year and 42.2% the year before that. He struggled for a good portion of the year, but that doesn't take away from just how important he is moving forward, especially with the departure of Kevin Love and the general inconsistency from every other reserve. Number 4 is Darius Garland. Don't shake your head at me. I can feel your disdain for this ranking. But here's the reality. The Cavs are in a position to make up for the loss or absence of Garland more than any other position on the team due to the abundance of playmaking guards at their disposal. Donovan Mitchell, Darius Garland, and Ricky Rubio can all contribute in this area. Ditto in the scoring department. They are much better suited to deal with a potential injury in that same spot than they have been in years past. They aren't one injury away from having to sign a Brandon Goodwin anymore. But with that said, Darius Garland is still important to what the Cavs do, and they will need him in order to make a deep playoff run. The all-star caliber guard is picking up right where he left off last season. In 59 games, he's averaging a career-high 22.1 points despite taking fewer shots, and dishing out a team-leading 7.9 assists for the Cavs. He is the Cavs' best facilitator, and the offense hums along a lot better when he's on the floor than not. The Vanderbilt product is the only player in the NBA averaging at least 22 points, dishing out at least 7 assists, and knocking down at least 41% of his triples. The only player in the NBA. That's pretty awesome. He can carry a team offensively on a lot of nights and already has 16 games in which he has scored at least 25 points. He is becoming more and more efficient and currently ranks 12th in 3-point percentage, 17th in offensive win shares, 18th in defensive win shares. The list goes on and on. But like I said, what he brings to the table can be replaced easier than the other areas of this team. The Cavs are currently 10-1 without him this year. Does that mean that they are better off without him? Absolutely not. It does, however, mean that they can get by without having him in stretches if he isn't available. Number 3 is Evan Mobley. The unicorn that is Mobley is still in the process of developing offensively despite putting up over 16 points a night. He continues to add to his offensive bag, and you can see his growth occurring in real time. The hype surrounding his sophomore season was massive, and while he didn't explode offensively like many people thought he would to begin the season, he turned in a really good January and has used that as a springboard to elevate his play. Since the 2023 calendar year began, Mobley has averaged 17.7 points, 9 rebounds, 2.7 assists, and 1.5 blocks over 32 games, as the team's third option most nights. Undoubtedly, he still has a lot of growth in front of him, but the glimpses of him being the Cavs' best overall player are occurring more and more frequently. On the other end of the floor is where he truly shines, boasting the league's best defensive win share total, as well as the league's 5th best defensive rating. Mobley is a true defensive nightmare for opponents. His unique frame allows him to step out onto the perimeter and defend smaller, quicker players, as well as protect the rim, as evidenced by his 1.4 blocks per game, which is top 10 at the moment. The only center to defend more triples is Julius Randle. He may not win the Defensive Player of the Year, but he's pretty damn deserving. Mobley could very well end up becoming the Cavs' long-term center of the future, but even if he doesn't and remains at the 4 for the foreseeable future, he has already rendered himself an invaluable part of this team and may eventually carry its title hopes on his broad shoulders. He's already off to an amazing start. Number 2. I really had a tough time with this one, but quite honestly, Jarrett Allen is the Cavs' second most important player, and for more than one reason at that. Jarrett Allen shares something in common with Isaac Okoro, and that is the fact that he is often taken for granted because he does a lot of the dirty work and doesn't average a ton of points. He has transitioned into the 4th option since the acquisition of Donovan Mitchell, and as an obvious result, he is taking fewer shot attempts. That hasn't stopped him from making the most of those opportunities, as he is averaging 14.4 points per game on the league's 4th best field goal percentage. He also boasts the league's 6th highest offensive rating, 4th best defensive rating, and get this, he's actually second to Mobley in defensive win shares. But Allen's importance can most be felt when he isn't available. Since the start of last season, the Cavs are 13-21 without him. That's 9-7 from last year and 4-4 this season. His absence is even more glaring now that Kevin Love is gone and the Cavs have no reliable depth at the 4 and 5 spots. The Cavs' options behind Allen aren't all that enticing. Robin Lopez can provide spot minutes as a reserve 5, but shouldn't be counted on regularly. If the Cavs want to go small, they can trot Dean Wade out there, but Dean's not exactly having a great season so far. Mamadi Diakite is on a 2-way deal and isn't eligible for the playoffs. Ditto for Isaiah Mobley. Those are the options. When Allen misses time, Mobley has to slide over to the 5, and that takes away from just how effective he can be as a defender because he has to focus much more on defending the paint and rim. It also means that he likely has to play a ton of minutes. The Texas product is on a pretty team-friendly contract and provides French all-star caliber play on a nightly basis. His presence on the court allows the backcourt to have a true back line of defense, and it also allows Mobley to roam freely as a free safety of sorts and take advantage of his best skill set as a defender. And last but not least, number 1. Look, we all know who the Cavs' best and most important player is currently. It could and should be Evan Mobley at his current trajectory in the very near future, but as of right now, it's Donovan "Spider" Mitchell. As I started this video off by saying the Cavs already knew who they were trading for when they acquired Mitchell, an NBA superstar about to hit his basketball prime. At 26 years old, he still fits the timeline of the rest of the core 4 on the roster. He also brings 39 career games of postseason experience, something the Cavs sorely needed and will likely lean on since they will enter the postseason and not the play-in for the first time without LeBron on the roster since the 1997-98 season. He's already proven just how effective he can be at taking over games. He holds the Cavs' single-game record for points, just surpassed J.R. Smith for most triples made in a season. He has scored at least 40 points 9 times this season and gone over the 30-point mark 25 times. He's the only player not named LeBron to have a top 10 points per game season in Cavs history. This man can flat out score. But it isn't just the fact that he can put up points, it's the way in which he does. He is truly a 3-level scorer. From rim-rocking dunks,
Williams helps, the Cavs rotate, Mitchell for the rim. Anthony dumps back to a wide open Love. Mitchell tracks down the long rebound, goes to the basket. It's a running start at Cornette. Swings it back to Mitchell. Mitchell got Brown on the fly, but he goes to the basket and buries Cornette.
and clutch mid-range jumpers.
Mitchell crossed over his man and Levine, and Donovan played 37 big minutes here tonight. Just under 8 to go. Mitchell pulls up. It doesn't matter how many.
3.5 in. Mitchell pulls up. He's got it.
To step back triples.
Now it's Mitchell. Mitchell picked up by Sabonis. Now Barnes. He'll fire at 3 and knock.
Donovan has his head up. Takes on Caruso for a long three.
It's 2012. They're hoping that's something that can be stabilized by Brunson as Mitchell.
This man can attack you in so many ways, and he's pretty efficient while doing so. He is one of only 2 players that are averaging at least 27 points, 47% field goal percentage, and 38% from range, with the other being former Cavalier Kyrie Irving. If the Cavs are able to make a deep playoff run this season, Mitchell will likely be the head of the snake, and that, my friends, is what makes him the most important player right now.